I will try to speak louder and through the mics. I do prefer if people do wear their masks. I think it's a mandate in all of it also. Since we have some new variations coming up, I think we should stick to the masks. All right, the first thing we're going to do is let people know that the
Right, so this is, you're reconvening the meeting of the Malden Historical Commission, December 1st, 2021. You had previously met at 5, and we temporarily adjourned, you're reconvening. So first you want to do a roll call.
first roll call. Okay, roll call with this end.
Joe Cesario, clerk.
Ina Bonitska, member.
Mary Hampton, member.
And Michelle Romero, city planner liaison to the commission.
And John Termendozzi, acting chairman for the commission. The first thing I want to mention is that there was two groups that are recording this. So for those in attendance, under the provisions of the open meeting law, attendees are being informed that this meeting is being recorded by the Mystic Valley Regional Center, Regional Charter School, and Brian DeLacy, and we have not been notified of anyone else videotaping. I don't want to see anyone videotaping, but that's telling us that you're doing it, even if it's on your phone. That's considered videotaping. Okay? So we all want to get this done, but get it done legally. So that's important. Okay. The next step.
So you're here to conduct a hearing. I'll read the notice of hearing. The Malden Historical Commission will hold a public hearing in the Herbert L. Jackson Council Chamber, Malden City Hall, 215 Pleasant Street, Malden, Mass. At 6 p.m. on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021, to review and consider the following. Notice of intent to demolish a building regarding demolition permit application CMID 039265-2021 for the building at the property known as the number 12-24 Lebanon Street, and known by City Assessors Parcel ID 134654421, which has been determined to be a significant building in accordance with Title 4, Chapter 24, Code of City of Malden, the Demolition and Alteration Delay Ordinance, and the Notice of Intent to Demolish a Building regarding Demolition Permit Application Number CMID 0039281, 2021, for the building at the property known as the number 28 Lebanon Street, and known by City Assessors Parcel ID number 134654420L, which has been determined to be a significant building in accordance with Title 4, Chapter 24, Code of the City of Malden, the Demolition and Alteration Delay Ordinance. This hearing is for the purpose of making the determination whether the building on each property is a preferably preserved building, and the demolition permit should be delayed in accordance with Title 4, Chapter 24, Code of the City of Malden, Demolition and Alteration Delay Ordinance. Chair, a couple of administrative pieces. Everyone must speak very loudly and clearly into the microphone. Anyone giving testimony must speak loudly and clearly into the microphone at the podium. You're also asked to sign in, name and address for the record. So anyone giving testimony must give their name and residential address for the record. In terms of the order of the hearing, you'll hear first from the petitioner. They'll make the presentation. Then you will open up the hearing for a public comment from members of the public. You're holding the hearing, the public hearings concurrently. All abutters of both properties have been notified in accordance with the ordinance. So anybody coming up to give testimony, again, name and address for the record, state whether you're in favor or in opposition, and you can state if you're specifically testifying regarding one of the two buildings or both. After the hearing closes, then the commission will make a determination for each building. So you'll make two separate decisions, but you're holding one public hearing that's covering both properties. At your request, I will, before you hear from the petitioner, you all have copies of your recent determination. I will read that into the record. This is dated November 8th, 2021. This is a letter addressed to Nelson Miller, the Building Commissioner of the City of Malden, regarding 12-24 Lebanon Street, parcel ID 134654421, demolition permit application number CMID 039-265-2021. This is a determination of significance pursuant to the demolition and alteration delay ordinance. The letter reads, Dear Mr. Miller, in accordance with Title 4, Chapter 24, Section 100 of the Code of the City of Malden, the demolition and alteration delay ordinance, the Malden Historical Commission hereby notifies you of its determination that the subject of the above referenced application, namely the building at the above referenced property, is a significant building. The Commission made this determination of significance on November 8, 2021, based on the following criteria of the ordinance. The building is with an area, namely Maplewood Square, surveyed by the city in accordance with the survey and inventory procedures of the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and said survey inventory form, inventory number MALP, is on file with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The building is assigned inventory number MAL 415. 2, the building is importantly associated with one or more historic persons or events with the broad architectural, cultural, political, economic, or social history of the city. And 3, the building is one whose loss would have a significant negative impact on the historical or architectural integrity or urban design character of the neighborhood. In accordance with the ordinance, no demolition permit may be issued at this time. It further reads that the Commission will hold a public hearing on December 1st for the purpose of determining whether the building on the property is a preferably preserved building. Will notify you of its determination in accordance with the ordinance. So this is the notice of determination that you've already submitted to the building commissioner. It notes that you're holding a hearing, which is tonight, for the purpose of determining whether the building is preferably preserved. You also issued another determination dated November 8, 2021 regarding 28 Lebanon Street, parcel ID 134654420L, demolition permit application CMID 03928-4-2021. It's addressed to Nelson Miller Building Commission of the City of Malden regarding a determination of significance pursuant to the demolition and alteration delay ordinance. It reads, in accordance with Title 4, Chapter 24, Section 100, the Code of the City of Malden, the demolition and alteration delay ordinance, the Malden Historical Commission hereby notifies you of its determination that the subject of the above referenced application, namely the building at the above referenced property, is a significant building. The Commission made this determination of significance on November 8, 2021, based on the following criteria of the ordinance. 1, the building is within an area, namely Maplewood Square, surveyed by the city in accordance with the survey and inventory procedures of the Massachusetts Historical Commission, and said survey inventory form, inventory number MALP, is on file with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. The building is assigned inventory number MAL 416. 2, the building is historically or architecturally important in terms of period, style, method of building construction, or association with a recognized architect or builder, either by itself or in the context of a group of buildings. 3, the building is importantly associated with one or more historic persons or events with the broad architectural, cultural, political, economic, and social history of the city. And 4, the building is one whose loss would have a significant negative impact on the historical or architectural integrity or urban design character of the neighborhood. In accordance with the ordinance, no demolition permit may be issued at this time. The Commission will hold a public hearing December 1st for the purpose of determining whether the building on the property is a preferably preserved building. Will notify you of its determination in accordance with the ordinance. So that was the notice of determination that you sent to the building commissioner. So with that, you will all have copies of this. You have copies of the notice of intent applications. You have copies of this area form survey forms. And with that, you are in a position to begin your public hearing.
As we begin the public hearing, the petitioners will make a presentation first, I believe. Are they here?
I'm just going to get up there to the back.
Sign in and then tell us your name before you start speaking. And one at a time, please.
Commission. My name is Damon Seligson. I'm an attorney with Sheehan, Finney, Bass, and Green in Boston. With me is Rick Bayou. We're both here on behalf of the Mystic Valley Regional Charter School.
You will be speaking separately, right?
Correct. I'm going to speak first, and then Mr. Bayou will fill in after me. I have a letter that I prepared that helps summarize the presentation. I tried to get it to Mr. Romero this afternoon, but
If that's the one you sent,
Yeah.
you're debating the historical significance, which has already been,
We changed the,
it's a modification of that letter.
what letter is it then? Do you have something new from them?
I have not received anything, so if you want, would you like them to hand it out to you, and then
They
they
can
will
hand it up,
read
that's
from
gonna
it?
slow down things anyway, because this is all new information.
Okay, So
the only thing
you're
that
gonna,
changed is the preferably preserved versus.
okay. So you're gonna read this into the record as part of your presentation, so that's fine. That's fine.
We'd like the gentleman to speak louder.
Can I remove my mask while I'm up here?
If you keep away from everybody, okay.
Okay. That may be helpful. I have an accent, and that may be muffled in the
This is more than accents are all acceptable.
thank you. Again, my name is Damon Seligson. I represent the Mystic Valley Regional Charter School. I understand that the Commission has reached the conclusion that 12 to 24 Lebanon Street and 28 Lebanon Street are, quote, significant buildings under the ordinance that applies with respect to the demolition permit. It is our position, as has been presented in this letter, that that conclusion is erroneous based on the facts, and therefore, because you have to find that in order to find the building is entitled to preferably preferred protection or status, such that the demolition permit can be delayed for 12 months. If you have a look particularly at 12 to 24 Lebanon Street, at Exhibit C of the letter, we have shown you 4 different views of the building. The building itself is a nondescript cinder block construction. It lacks any significant style or design aspects. It's in a somewhat blighted condition, and it would be, we think, absurd to maintain that the building is one whose loss would have a significant negative impact on the historic or architectural integrity or urban design character of the neighborhood. I understand you've reached that conclusion, and therefore you can then go on to the next step on the analysis. But to reach that conclusion, we argue that that is not a building that is historically or architecturally significant or important in terms of period, style, method of construction, or association with a recognized architect or builder. My understanding is that it was operated as a business called Nelson's for many years, and that the area that juts out at 12 Lebanon Street and the business that eventually expanded down the entire bottom floor of the building, later on, that the Nelson's closed in the mid-1980s, and that the family that operated Nelson's left the community of Malvern and went to Winchester. So there is no tie to the historic nature of this building. My client wants to take the building down and use it as a place where the children at the school can use as a playground. If they cannot do that, Mr. Vade will explain, then they have to use the parking lot. That's going to impact that local community even more than if the building was taken down, because there will be no parking. That's going to impact the residents who live there under month-to-month leases. That's going to impact the businesses who operate there, who have a need for parking. So we think that the determination that it's a significant building is respectfully not warranted under the facts. and we respectfully submit to you that the consequences of that determination will be widespread. My understanding is there is a business there that serves chicken. There is a business there that is an Italian restaurant. Those leases are month to month. There are residential tenants as well. With respect to the style of the building, at Exhibit A to the letter that we've attached, which is the City of Malden's Inventory Form A continuation sheet, we've highlighted Nelson's Bakery down at the 5th line of that chart at 12 to 24 Lebanon Street, where it says style or form. Your own form says no style. Whereas other historic buildings on that list have Queen Anne, Colonial Revival, Victorian Eclectic, Post-War Contemporary. 12 to 24 has no style on their own inventory form that the city has with the Mass Historical Commission. So it's our position that 12 to 24 really is not something that should be subject to the demolition delay permit protection. With respect to 28 Lebanon Street, we've listed out the reasons why. Again, respectfully, it should not be deemed a significant building. It's been used as a movie theater. Thereafter, it was used as a bank. My understanding is that it was vacant for a period of time and it was empty, and that my clients, when they took over it in November of 2020, applied for the permit, and it was now deemed to be a significant building. It's in better condition than 12 to 24, that's for sure. And you can see those pictures at the at Exhibit E. But again, it's not a historic building of significance, and respectfully, we believe that you should not be able to reach the second prong of your analysis, which is that it is entitled to preferably preferred treatment, such that the delay of the demolition permit should issue under this ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions for you. The purpose of the ordinance is to protect and preserve those buildings that are significant, which constitute or reflect distinctive features of the architectural, cultural, economic, political, social history of the city, and to limit the detrimental effect of demolition and alteration of the buildings on the character of the city. We represent that that's not going to happen in this case with these two buildings, and that the permit should issue. Mr. Vayu can explain more of the factual underpinnings with respect to the tenants, but the impact will be worse, unfortunately, if the permits are not issued than if there is no than if there is a delay. I'm happy to answer any questions if the Commission has anything.
Not at this time. Not at this time. We will hear the other petitioner.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Rick Vayu, and I oversee finance, facilities, and operations for the Mystic Valley Regional Charter School. Let me begin by saying that we understand the concept of preferably preferred buildings. Case in point, the fire station on Laurel Street that we own was preserved and underwent significant renovation and investment by us to restore it to its original architecture. We even were presented a Historical Preservation Award for this project from the City of Malden, which we display proudly in that building. We purchased Maplewood Baptist Church several years ago on Salem Street, and we've committed to keep that building as it is on the outside and had restored the exterior portion of the building, we would agree if that building was considered historical significance and preferred preservation. So look at the before and after of Eastern Avenue, where Davidson Chevrolet used to be. Quite frankly, I believe that you can take any of our school properties and see that we keep our properties looking good throughout the year. For the reasons outlined by our attorney, we don't agree that this preferably preferred buildings concept applies to the buildings you are reviewing tonight. It's my understanding that in the past, the previous owner almost had the building condemned by the city because of the condition of the building. So for it to be considered historically significant and preferably preserved is laughable. Our actions thus far show that we want to work with our commercial tenants and neighboring business establishments. We've currently continued to allow parking for our tenants as well as neighboring businesses in Maplewood Square since we purchased the property in July. Our current plan before you is to demolish 12 to 24 and 28 Lebanon Street properties and make recreation space for our students to address our loss of use of Trafton Park due to its planned renovations that are coming up. In addition, we have near-term plans to do some window and exterior renovations to our existing school building on Laurel Street that will cause us to lose outdoor recreational space. In the plans before you, our goal is to keep some general open access parking on the north side of the 28 Lebanon Street property for our tenants and the neighboring businesses in Maplewood Square. If this body determines tonight that 12 to 24 Lebanon Street and 28 Lebanon Street are preferred buildings, thus delaying the demolition of these buildings, we will be forced to deal with the loss of 15,000 square footprint of the land that 12 to 24 Lebanon Street building sits on today. We will be forced to close the parking lot and not allow any open access to general parking. We will be forced to terminate commercial leases immediately for those on a month-to-month lease. Currently, there's 2 commercial tenants that are on a month-to-month lease, Serena's and Crown Fried Chicken. We have started the notice to quit process with residential tenants that we will have to accelerate. Counselor Staff 4 has reached out to us to see what we can do to delay and potentially accommodate those existing residential tenants. We've reached out to the city to engage in developing a win-win strategy for this property, but have not received any response to date. We are willing to reconsider our request for the immediate demolition of 28 Lebanon Street until we have a clear plan for a new school building. In the end, we know the Dover Amendment will prevail and we will build a school at this location. In the meantime, the fate of Maplewood Square's continued viability is in your hands. Just to make it perfectly clear, if 12 to 24 Lebanon Street is designated by this body to be a preferably preferred building and the demolition is delayed, we will be forced to close the parking lot and there will no longer be any general public parking for visitors to Maplewood Square at our property. We will be forced to start the eviction process for commercial and residential tenants on a month-to-month basis, as there will be no parking to support those businesses. Please factor these concepts into your deliberation tonight. Thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you for your presentation. Now we open to comments on the presentation. Right?
If the commission, you would first see if the commissioners have any questions for the petitioner. If they don't, then you will go to public comment. The public comment is on whether the buildings are preferably preserved. It's not necessarily on their presentation. So that was the opportunity for the petitioner to speak, to give the presentation. Now you can do public comment if you're ready for that.
Well, I have one question. In their proposal, they talked about a parking lot and so forth, and now they're talking about a new school. We didn't see that as a future plan. I know we had just a temporary parking lot, but you never mentioned it was going to be a new school site, as far as I can see.
We've indicated our long-term intent is to put a school building there. Today, we don't have any plans for that. Our short-term interim plan is to use it as we presented in the process requesting the demolition permit to be recreational space.
But it would eventually hopefully be a school.
At some point in the road, yes.
I just want to understand what you're presenting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let's open it to any particular questions. All right, open up for comments from the general public. Those in favor first.
Well,
Not going to make any difference, they can, whoever it is,
yeah,
but come to the podium.
you can state whether you're in favor of preferably preserved or in opposition to preferably preserved, just so it's clear.
You can speak either way, as long as you present yourself, give us your name, your address carefully, and then present your argument of which way, but at the end, let us know what you think, for or against, okay?
You can do in favor separate from in opposition. It's just a little sometimes confusing because in opposition, are you in opposition to preferably preserved or in opposition to demolition? And people, in past hearings, it's confusing, so you typically have been calling just for comment in general.
Okay, that's what we'll do, we'll call for comments in general, and then we'll waive them. Okay, who wants to be the first? Come on.
You just have to give your name and address for the record and sign the sheet. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm a 96-year-old World War II
What's
veteran.
your name first?
My name is John C. Picardi, P-I-C-A-R-D-I.
Oh, I know Picardi, I'm from Edgeworth.
Oh, great. You know exactly what we're
I
doing.
don't know, one of them anyway.
Well, there's a lot of Picardis.
Okay, what's your address, John?
34 Orchard Street.
Thank you.
Hurrah. Because that's exactly what I fought for. I fought at Normandy, North Africa, all the way through to last, when it wound up the war. I was in Wiesbaden, Germany. I was 17 years old when I enlisted. And my brothers, 5 brothers, were fighting in the Pacific. I'm the only one that fought in Europe. My mother, my father, pushed a banana cart all the way up here, way back in the early days when he left Italy. And he loved Maplewood, and I loved Maplewood. I fought for Maplewood. I fought for that place, the theater, and all those things that were going on. Well, I had a heck of a good history. I wrote a book about it. They were going to make a movie of it. I still got the book. My mother told us this country is worth fighting for. Maplewood is worth fighting for. We had a banana store right beside where Head Nelson's Bakery is. 6 of us all hung up in that corner. That is prime property. You should not give it to these people to ruin it. It's rotten. And before I die, I want to see myself stay there until I'm 105 years old, because I'm going to fight for every ounce of that ground, just like I fought in Europe. And my mother made us go out there. My father fought in the First World War. What are you going to do, knock all this stuff down? I can tell you stories there that Jack read in the theater. I was caught between the third. And when I went in there, she went in the back there. We had no money, no nothing. And we stood our ground in this thing. And by golly, there's a lot of guys that died in this war. There would be 12 of us went in. And we all fought for Maplewood and more. We all hung in that corner. There's a lot that's not to knock down. You put those schools in there, I gotta suffer all the property, people walking across my property and all that stuff. I gotta give it all up, and I worked like a son of a bee to get this crowd. I quit in the high school when I was 17 years old. And 4 years later, I get there, I'm in North Africa, I finally started going home. The war shakered down. And I said, I got enough places to go home. My 4 brothers were in the Pacific. One guy got strapped on all 3 of his legs. Another guy got Blackwater, whatever you feed them, from what they did down there. All this from Maplewood, all of it, all of it. Half the guys I went with were all dead. I'm the only one left. And so when it came down to, we decided I went to see him, and I did the Kansas for a while, and I came back and I wanted to die here. But whatever you do, please, 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 don't let them do this to us. Don't. It's not right. It's just not right. There's a lot of history there. Put a school up, and we have to run across our property, all the noise. What's going to happen to the property there? We got to get it all up. Where am I going to go at 96 years old? Tell me. Where am I going to go? I don't know where to go. I want to can't live the rest of my life. These people come in there. Look what they've done. They're taking up everything in Maplewood right now. How much more are we going to give them? Now we give them all that ground in there? No, it's not right. My dad had a banana store right next to the Nelson's Bakery. I can name you all the stuff that we went through there. There's a lot of good history there. And you knock that down, you might as well knock down that Mall of Malton. I hope I said enough. You said it, please.
You said enough, John. Thank you for your
Whatever you
enthusiasm.
do, stay with us. Stay with us,
For your
please.
enthusiasm and for your service, too.
Thank you. And I did it not only for myself, but for all you people, all my brothers too. They're all dead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your service. Steve Winslow, 83 Jacob Street. I'm the counselor at large right now and incoming Ward 6 counselor. John, my dad was only 17 at the end of World War II. He couldn't serve, so he couldn't fight alongside you, but I'm happy to be fighting alongside with you to save Maplewood Square. You fought for important values in our country, and we need to recognize that here. That though Maplewood may not have been the stylishest place in Massachusetts, it's some place that people call home and is near and dear. So,
Speak to us, John, not to the audience.
okay, sorry. Okay. So, John, thank you. As I said, I have prepared a letter that I did send to Michelle Romero. I don't know if you distributed that or not, but
Yes,
I got
everybody
copies.
did receive a copy.
So did everybody receive a copy of that? Okay.
It's in the package of information.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'll read my cover letter and then I'll summarize my other things. So I am writing to call on the Malden Historical Commission to determine the buildings located at 12 to 24 Lebanon Street and 28 Lebanon Street to be determined to be preferably preserved under Title 4, Chapter 24 Code of the City of Malden. These buildings are preferably preserved because they sit within Maplewood Square, the area set forth in the 2017 Historic Inventory prepared by the Malden Historic Commission and on file as Historic Commission. The Historic Commission at that time previously recommended that Maplewood Square area be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The buildings are historically important in terms of the builders and the context of the buildings that comprise Maplewood Square. The buildings are associated with historic persons and the social history of Maplewood and Malden. The loss of these buildings would have a significant negative impact on the historical, architectural, and urban design character of the neighborhood, as you will very much hear from the other people here. I also call on the Malden Historic Commission to reject these applications under Section 4.24.050H, since the applicant has has provided inaccurate information on the true intention for the use of these properties, in an attempt to avoid having the Commission fulfill its responsibilities under the Malden Demolition Delay Ordinance to seek alternatives to demolition of historic buildings in Malden. Furthermore, there are multiple alternatives to the temporary inconvenience associated with future construction of Drafton Park that exist and that warrant rejecting an incomplete and inaccurate application. So as you'll see in my letter, and you did in the inventory, there's a copy of that inventory from 2017 that shows you did inventory this property. And I do have to say, that was well before there was any intentions here with the charter school. You did not make that inventory under the pressure of public pressure. That was something this commission did independent on its own. So I appreciate that effort. And then based on that inventory, and I think this is one of the most significant or few full area inventories the city did, you recommended that Maplewood Square in and of itself, including the buildings, be recommended for listing on the historic National Register. So those those are things that all happened, we made the determined well before the threats that are received tonight from the charter school about affecting businesses. Your job here is not to respond to threats, it's to fulfill your responsibilities as a Historic Commission under the ordinance and focus on making this determination preferable for not to kowtow to the threats at that. I'll deal with that as a city councilor. We'll work this out as a neighborhood if the charter school feels they have to threaten the neighborhood to get its way. Number 3, the buildings are historic in terms of their builders and as a group. Maplewood area has really been a center for commerce for over 300 years. Waite's Tavern was established along Salem Street, and it was really what started the seed of Maplewood Square. And that's, I do have to say that that's something that's documented in the Images of America of Malden that, unfortunately Frank Russell of the Historic Commission who passed away helped put this together. Maybe some of your members did as well. That's some of the things I'm referring to. So 300 years, it was the seed, and about 130 years ago when the Saugus Ranch Railroad came through, Maplewood Square really started to take shape. And the fact is that the Maplewood Fire Station and the Maplewood Baptist Church wouldn't even be called Maplewood if it was not for the grouping of buildings in Maplewood Square at the intersection of Salem, Maplewood, and Lebanon Street. Groups of buildings matter in historic context, whether you have some highfalutin architect that designed them or not. The community cares about these, and you can see from these images from the Malden book that on page 63 of the book, a photo from 1930 of Maplewood Square, and you can see 12 and 24 Lebanon. You could be transported 90 years from 1930 to today, stand on the corner at Lebanon, and you could recognize you're in Maplewood Square. So if you're talking about preserving historic character, the fact that this square has remained relatively unchanged for 90 years is significant in and of itself. So I think that's something to very much consider, and that's what we're talking about today. Just related to historic persons and social history. Let's talk about 12 to 24 Lebanon Street. Nelson's Bakery. I unfortunately, we moved to Maplewood in 1991, a few years after Nelson's closed. But I swear, everybody who was in Maplewood before that, Nelson's is a beloved institution. And I think the thing, as I was preparing for this meeting, I realized is that Nelson's is just one of the things you look at Maplewood, and you go to Maplewood now. Why is Maplewood Square still active and vital after 130 years? Because Maplewood's been a place where immigrants can come to a place like Malden and start a business and dream the dream and work hard to get that. That happened 130 years ago, and it's still happening today, and it will happen in 130 years now if you determine this is preferably preserved and we stick together as a community to make sure this business district that's at the heart of the neighborhood remains a business district. So I think that's one of the key things that the group of buildings is important. So Nelson's, they were very significant, 80 years in the community, and I think there's some stories here about how they helped other immigrants come and establish themselves and grow other businesses in the community. So that's what Maplewood Square is. It's not just a group of businesses. It's been a place that's been part of the immigrant character of Malden for 130 years or longer, and not respecting that and respecting that small businesses are an important part of that. So that's very important to the character of this. So I think the other thing I would say is that in terms of World War II veterans, one of the things that I refer to, and this is referred to in what's called Maplewood Memories in 1999, as part of Malden's 350th, Frank Russell and others put together a memory book. There was a big reunion in Trafton Park, and people from Maplewood, so this book was put together, talked about the Malden Savings Bank. At that time, in 1948, when a lot of veterans, including Judge Donnelly, a very famous person in Maplewood, came back from World War II, they started up businesses. And one of the things that was lacking in Neighborhood Square was the lack of a bank building. So they worked from 1948 to 1954 to convince Malden Cooperative Bank to establish a bank branch at the former theater in the neighborhood, which had been burnt down and hadn't been active. So they worked to bring this building to Maplewood Square. So that's important, that just as John worked, fought so hard in Europe, his comrades came back and were part of the greatest generation, the baby boom generation. So that's something to respect too, that that's something unique actually in Maplewood Square, that there's that historic connection that World War II veterans were involved in helping to create that building. So I think that's something that's important in terms of social connection there as well. And you do hear that was something, there is some architectural things there as well. And as I've said, I mean, the loss of buildings would have a significant negative impact on the character of the neighborhood. I mean, you'll hear that from more people, but, as you know, I mean, Maplewood started out as being called Scandin, and that was at the time of Waite's Tavern. Back around the time the Saugus Branch Railroad was established in the 1850s, the developer Waite, actually Webster, renamed the area Maplewood, planted a lot of maple trees, and helped create the environment that created a residential area with, at heart, a business district. And so that's what we see today. And as your inventory from 2017 says, as a group of historic buildings at Maplewood Square, they retain their integrity in terms of size, scale, and massing. They tend to incorporate replacement window sash, and others, display stores, and in the case of wood frame buildings, synthetic siding. The buildings closest to the square, heading east on Salem and north on Lebanon, tend to be attached, creating a continuous street wall. Beyond the square, most buildings are detached on parcels that encompass lawns, driveways. Demolition has impacted some of the block, notably the gas station. But a lot of the block is consistent, as you see from that 1930s photo, that for 90 years, this has been an attacked place, and you can still recognize it. So that's historically significant. And I think the other thing in the context of, you folks, some of you went and lived in Malden through the 1970s, and you saw how, I never went to Suffolk Square before that was gone, so I have no idea. But I see, there was some inventory related to Suffolk Square that I've read. And knowing there was a true square there, but neighborhood businesses and residents above those, and through some brilliant move of urban development, those buildings were torn down, streets realigned, some modernization there. It's great we have senior housing, it's Suffolk Manor, but can you really call Suffolk Square this urban center anymore? Yeah, there's some commercial businesses there, but the seniors at Suffolk Manor don't use that. So that's the thread here, is that what is a place for Maplewood residents to come shop, to eat, to get their hair braided, their nails done, to get something at the fish market, or only fish market in Malden, a meat market. These small businesses are the character, and this is going to, this is what the demolition lady is talking about, preserving not only the facade of a building, but the historic character of a group of buildings, and that tearing those down is essential. And then finally, the other thing I do include in my comments is that back on June 25th, in the Malden Advocate, the charter school announced the purchase of these properties. And at that time, it was a clear intent, and quoting from Mr. Dan of the school, that their intent was to really need for space for expansion to accommodate 300 students. So that was what their intent was June 25th. At that point, they had no idea that the city was even planning to do a phase 2 of construction at Trapton Park. So this commission, one of the things you can do is look at and really see what their intent was, and then not necessarily, you have to make that decision about whether their intent, they said it on June 25th, when they announced this thing to the world, is different than what they're submitting to you, and is it really accurate and complete? Because if you allow this sort of subterfuge about what their true intent here, you might as well just rip up our demolition ordinance, to be honest, because every building owner will do this. They'll just propose some interim use that will allow them to tear everything down and not have to work with the commission, as you've done in many instances, to figure out what should happen to these buildings, and then be on their merry way and not really be involved with the Historic Commission. So this is a real threat to your future jurisdiction. So I think you should take a bold stand and just reject these applications in and of themselves. So I thank you very much, and like I say, I am standing here with Mr. Riccardi and the other residents of Maplewood Square to defend this important square. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. I'm Linda McDonald. I'm from Garden Street in Maplewood Square. And I moved here 16 years ago, and I moved here because of Maplewood Square. And that's the two significant buildings we're talking about. Whether they were famous architects, they dominate the square. And the small shops on the bottom, although some of them could be renovated, it's a very nice building. And the bank building is pretty. It might be the prettiest one there. It would be such a loss to the square to have the middle of the square torn apart for a park because someone won't have a park for a couple of months. Makes absolutely no sense to me. So I'm opposed to the demolition, and I'm also opposed to being threatened by developers who are going to evict tenants and do awful things to Malden because they didn't get their way. That's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else want to make comments one way or the other? I just want to keep things moving, that's all.
Okay.
But I don't want to be here all night.
You won't be. My name is Mary LaVoy, and I'm at 100 Holiday in Maplewood Square. And I bought my home almost 30 years ago, okay, because of Maplewood Square. And I do not want to live in Charter School Square. This is our home. We live here. You don't. We go to the stores. We service the people. Those are our neighbors. Those are our stores. Okay? You're not going to come in and tell Malden it's not historical. This is Malden. That's why I bought my home here.
Make sure you speak to us, Mary, not to the audience.
Okay, but I just want to know, I don't want to live,
I'm running everything.
okay, I don't want to live, okay, in Charter School Square. I want to live in Maplewood Square. That's my home, okay? That's for my children and my great-grandchildren. And you know what? No one's going to utilize those businesses except the people that live there. Okay? It is historical. That's why I moved here, from Somerville. Okay? I bought my home here because I wanted to live in Maplewood Square. And I'll be damned if I'm going to live in Charter Square. Okay? Enough is enough. The snow is coming, the snowball's rolling, and it's going to go on, and before you know it, all of Lebanon Street on that whole area will be gone. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go for my coffee? Where am I going to go for my chicken salad? Okay?
from my childhood, was it? Okay? This is our, we live there, we pay that taxes, and enough's enough of it. Okay? And leave those poor tenants alone there. Don't hurt them.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
your
My name is Jennifer Smith.
Would you repeat that a little bit louder,
Of
Jennifer?
course. My name is Jennifer Smith. I am a Malta resident. Although I'm not familiar with a lot of the history of that location,
Address.
I'm very unimpressed
Excuse
with
me, address, they need it for the record.
Malden, Mass. I'll write it down specifically there to keep it confidential
Okay,
for my
we need
privacy.
it on the record then.
Yes, that's fine. Although I'm not familiar with as much as the history of some of the old residents, I do acknowledge that once you take down a building, you cannot take it down. One of those buildings is 101 years old, I believe. To me, that's important. I don't think you should listen to threats from anyone. I don't like how that school comes in here threatening the community, threatening people, threatening students. Are those the characteristics that you want your children to learn? I don't think it's mine. So I ask that you consider that.
Thank you very much for your input.
Kate Marie Roycroft, 23 Havelock Street.
What was the name again? He's not getting it.
Sorry, Kate Marie Roycroft. I lived in Maplewood Square for 6 years. I walk there every single day. I buy my food there. I go to the meat market and get my meat and my fish. I bring my daughter with me. My husband too. This new baby will come to Maplewood with me. We don't want to lose the integrity of the square. It's a commerce center. It's businesses. It's there for the residents. To change that and the historical nature of the square would be devastating. Really oppose this. And thank you guys for standing up. Thank you.
Can I have your address again, please?
23 Havelock.
We may move a little bit faster if we stop the applauding. Just That's for us to decide later on. We'll hear all the information first, but thank you for your input, everybody.
My name is Tatiana Olivera. I live on 22 Lagoon Street. And,
You're going to have to repeat it again for our secretary here.
Sorry?
Would you repeat your name and address for us?
Tatiana.
Tatiana, okay.
And I actually live on 22 Lagoon Street. I lived there for, I don't know, maybe more than 15 years. I raised my kids on that building. And we are being evicted actually by the charter school. And I'm here to represent not just my family, but the other two families. I'm sorry. They are also being evicted. They give us a month and a half to leave the apartment, and we didn't play that because they told us that would give us until April 2023 to move. And they just sent a letter to all of us, and they gave us until December 31st for us to leave. So that's more than a historical place. That Maplewood Square, the place that I raised my kids, and it's just pretty sad what they are doing, not just with the neighbors, but with us, you know. And I'm sorry I get emotional, but it's just very, it's a very scary moment for me and for all the neighbors and for my family, because it's our home. It's our home, and I will fight for my house. I don't have no place to go. I don't have money to leave the place, and I'm gonna fight for my house, for my home, for my rights, and for the rights of my kids. Thank you.
Good evening, Roberto DeMarco, 17 Division Street.
He's up on top of that hill, Division Street, where you walk. He's on Division Street, 17.
Hello, Commission. I've been before you before. I'm very familiar to all of you. And I usually come before you to speak in favor of a project to be put up. And today I stand before you in opposition to the application that's been submitted. The reason for that is it does not follow the precedent that you've set forth previously, that we have argued in good faith with one another several times about, that we have debated, that you have insisted upon certain steps be taken at all times with every one of the projects that I've submitted. Those steps are mitigation, those steps are process, and those steps are honesty. What you've heard tonight so far discredits the application that was submitted. You are allowed to take under consideration whether or not you believe the testimony that's been submitted to you. And what's happened tonight, first, thank you, Mr. Winslow. He took about 90% of what I was going to say. But in terms of the discrediting, what you've heard tonight is that the petitioner has made representations in the news, publicly, and tonight changed those representations. It's made representations to the tenants in writing, and then changed those representations. Now they've made representations to you, and back those representations up with threats. Then, just to change the representations. That discredits the testimony that they've already submitted to you. They've offered no mitigation. They've offered no alternatives. They've simply given you absolutes without anything else to go on. That allows you to discredit the entire application, and as Mr. Winslow stated, to effectively toss it. Because you needed to be honest. You needed to be forthright at the beginning so that you can then work through the issues, decide on whether or not the petition is accurate, and go from there to preserve the history of Malden. In their petition, they outright stated that there was nothing historical, yet later on talked about businesses that were there, and then stated the standard included economic history. In its petition itself, it laid out discrepancies, which allowed you then to discredit the testimony. I would urge you to stay your course. Your precedent is well established in this community. You have forced me several times to come before you to work, whether it be on an entire area or on a building or on a piece of the building that had historical significance for this city. And I worked with you in good faith every time. I urge you to force these petitioners to do exactly the same. That's why you have a demo delay. You have the ability to force this to a halt, take time, and if they decide to go through with their threats, it is not on you. They have alternatives. They are one of the most powerful educational institutions in the area. They have the ability to find alternatives. They don't have to take the steps. They simply want to force the hand of the community. It's not right. Follow your precedent that you've established over the past few years. Follow through with what you've already laid out, and make them stay the course like you make everybody else. Or else next time I come before you, I'll be looking to them and what their precedent they've said is. Thank you.
My name is Brian DeLisi from 1 Earl Street. I came with some prepared remarks, which I'm pretty much going to throw out because of the great discussion that's taken place here. And it's a joy, really, to follow people of respect and credibility in the city who actually are talking about the subterfuge that you were seeing and discrediting the applicants from a well-endowed institution in the city. The charter school, as you know or may not know, has made liberal use of Malden facilities for the duration of the period of time that they've been here. They would not have thrived and succeeded were it not for the beneficence of the city. For anybody who knows their utilization of Trafton Park or Dever Park, those school children and administrators have benefited enormously. Anybody who knows their school down that end of the city knows that the children play on asphalt day in, day out. How about planting some grass there? They do have alternatives, okay? Historically, I looked into the Mass General Law that empowers you folks to do the job that you do. It's a very important job. You can publish information, you can research information, you can coordinate groups of the city, including residents. I think you ought to do that. I'd like you to do that. I ask you to do that. I submitted a letter to Mr. Romero as the liaison to your commission earlier in the week with an update today that includes over 50 residents who have submitted an open letter raising questions about the charter school's behavior. So I really call on you to do the right thing. Just an idea that popped into head here just based on the testimony of the people who live in the neighborhood. I don't frequent in the area. I have friends who live in the neighborhood, and I understand the complications of traffic and other things that have come to the city because of the charter school. But one thing is really very elegant about the specific building that we're looking at right now tearing down. And I'm opposed to the demolition of both buildings. I do believe they should be preserved. The property that has commercial businesses on the first floor and residential environments on the second floor. That's actually fairly, I don't know exactly when that came into being, but it's now a common practice to put commercial businesses on the first floor for pedestrian traffic and residences on the upper floors. We saw that in the Masonic Temple development that took place down the street. That is worth preserving because it was foresightful in the way that people went about doing that. I'll close on one last thing. This was posted in a social media post earlier today, but based on a review of the demolition notice of intent, there's another element on that form which is duplicitous, that is almost, misinformation in the way it's presented. One of the demolition permits indicates that it's a commercial industrial building. They completely neglect and look past the fact that it provides, at least as I understand it, 4 apartment residences, which you just heard the moving testimony of from one of the residents. Why did they not provide that information to you, the commission? In fact, they signed off on it in a scrawl that's unreadable to the uninformed eye, where it indicates that they provided all the information and that the application was complete and accurate. It absolutely is not complete, as you heard from their own voices today. It is not accurate, and I would submit that it needs to reflect the fact that there are residential properties that are also about to be demolished by their will. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, that letter that Mr. DeLacy is referencing that came by email was addressed to the entire state delegation and various other city officials. It was not, to my understanding, submitted to the commission for purposes of this hearing. We do not have a copy of that letter. If Mr. DeLacy wants to read the letter into the record, he can, but it was not, there was nothing specific about the demolition. It was more about other issues with the charter school. So you don't have a copy of that, and that's not being entered in to the record. If you want to give him the opportunity to enter it in, he'd have to read that into the record. So I'm just letting you know that was not done.
It goes back to the idea of the application, whether it was filled in correctly or not, or some stuff was held back at this point. And we've heard that for a number of other people.
No, I'm just saying the letter he referenced you don't have, it was not put into the record.
That's right.
Okay.
I'd like to accept it as part of the record so we can read it in more detail. Do we have to listen to it all, or did he outline it enough for us?
No, that's my point, is the letter talks about a lot of other issues to do with the school, and the Department of Education, and issues with tax obligations and finances, so that's why I do not think it was nothing, there was no mention of the demolition. I think there was one.
This issue here tonight is really to determine whether the building should be perfectly preserved. We're not going to go on to the history of the charter school.
Okay, so
how they handled their money and everything.
Okay,
That's
so
another
whatever
matter.
he referenced it, but that's not being submitted into your record. Thank you.
Right, yeah. you give us your name and address?
My name is Joseph Gray. I live at 295 Maryland Elm Street in Malden. I don't have any prepared statements tonight. I am in support of Councilor Winslow. I came before a previous body and I stated that this is a scary time we're in. What's happening in Maplewood Square, we're looking at losing 3 sit-down restaurants and a very active barber shop. And they're proposing turning it into some sort of educational campus, literally destroying a huge section, probably at least 25% of the business infrastructure of Maplewood Square. A month or 2 ago, I said it was scary. I'm going to say it now. You've heard it from one of the tenants living there. People don't like this. You know, we're not professionals. You know, we're not engineers. But we have eyes. We can see. This is destroying our neighborhood. Okay? If I were a professional lawyer, I could nitpick this apart and tell you everything that's wrong with this application the charter schools proposing to demolish those buildings, but I'm not. All I can tell you is what's happening, how people are feeling, and how this is going to affect us. I'm going to say one last time before I sit down. 3 sit-down restaurants and a barber shop. Those are going to be irreplaceable. There's nowhere else to go in Maplewood Square. Okay? That's going to gut the heart of the square, and people are going to go elsewhere. If we lose the parking, we lose the building, we lose the tenants, we lose 3 restaurants. That's sad. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
While we're waiting for the next person, I just want to correct my statement. That letter was actually addressed to the mayor, Gary Christensen, and I was copied on it as well as the other city officials and state reps, state and city reps, so that was my correction on that.
Take this down.
Name and address, but you keep it down, just don't come close to me.
My name is Joy Pearson. I live at 193 Sylvan Street, which is in Maplewood. I have been in Maplewood for 23 years. I look to the square as a community business district. It is a community business district to be preserved. It has history. It has beloved neighbors. It has everything that should be preserved. I oppose the school idea. Maplewood Square is not for a school. It is for businesses. It generates, as I have said before, it generates taxes for the city. I have looked at other charter schools. I have looked to see if other charter schools have disrupted business districts. I have not found any who have done that. There are other places that the charter school can go. There are other options. I don't know if these people directly work at the charter school anyway. I think they might be a separate business that is hired by the charter school to do their business, which is not one of the criteria for being public. A public school must answer to the public. We are the public. We oppose the so-called public school. Now, I have heard that originally charter schools were to have more freedom to come up with innovative services that they could share with the other public schools. I have not known that to happen. I think that has been circumvented. And we have evidence here and evidence in the past that this Mystic Valley Regional Private School does not cooperate with a request to communicate to the residents or to the city or to the school committee. They just don't operate in the way they were originally. Their charter schools, to my understanding, were originally meant to be. So I will stand on other statements that I have made in the past, and you have them. Oh, when I was coming here, the bank has already had some demolition. It is the, I was coming on the bus, and I looked for the time. I knew I would be early. There is no clock. The clock has been removed. Now, I don't know who removed the clock, but it is gone. And anybody can see that, unless it's been taken down just while I'm here and it's going to be put back when we go home, which is kind of ridiculous. So I do oppose anything that the Mystic Valley Regional Charter School proposes. I think this should not only be delayed, I think it should be prevented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If the clock has already been removed, that's part of a demolition.
No, that property does have a permit for renovations,
For renovations, but they'll be
interior, I believe they're interior renovations.
interior, the clock is on the exterior, as far as I remember. This is the first I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's the first I'm hearing of the clock, so that's an exterior alteration. Yes, so that,
If I may on that issue, the clock is,
hold on a second, the chair would need to recognize you, so, I'm not sure about the clock being removed. Nelson, no, as building commissioners here, we can hear from him about it. I know there's a permit for interior renovations.
Okay, I think that's what you're respond to that, or point to the clock right now.
yes, we applied for a permit to replace the clock and the sign. It's in the process of being replaced by a local business signer. It should be up within the next few weeks.
But it won't be the one that was there historically correct for that building.
Well, we applied for a permit and were granted a permit to replace the clock.
I think it should have come before us. That's an alteration that makes a difference entirely. So,
Well, we can hear from Nelson Miller about that. This property was flagged because it is part of an inventory area, so any permits for alterations or demolition,
should have come to us.
well, any demolition of any building, but any alteration permits should be reviewed by the commission, so.
So, where do we stand with it if it's already gone?
We'll have to, do you want to call Nelson Miller if he has an answer? I'm not sure of the status of that permit, or if he has more information.
Nelson, can you help us out up here, please?
Yep, the charter school applied for a permit to change the sign, which included the clock on the front of the building. And it went through the sign design review committee to the city, and new design was approved.
It was approved, but hasn't been done yet because we still have them as part of our inventory properties, that they should come to us before they change that. Other places that wanted to change signs have come to the commission. Eastern Bank on Salem, Pleasant Street and so forth. So has this clock been removed yet, do you know?
I can't speak to the status.
Who has?
I wonder who has it, quite honestly, because it's an old clock that belongs on that building.
Yeah, right.
And I would like to know where it is, and if it gets done, maybe it has to be put back. So I'm wondering, does anyone know where it is? Now, this is a general question to anybody. Does anyone know where the clock is, and if we can get it, because it might have to be put back?
That would be the petitioner you need to ask. But do you have any, this is Nelson Miller Building Commission for the record. Do you have any other questions?
From Nelson? No, thank you, Nelson. Who from the Mystic Valley Charter can answer my question, if at all? Where is the clock?
It's gone.
I would assume it's with Sign Art, who is replacing the sign. The sign was a standalone structure in front of the building, off of the sidewalk, and not part of the building. We went through the process where it was an electronic clock. It was about a 18-inch square sign that was vacant when Citizens Bank left. And we went through the permit approval process, and we were granted the permit to replace.
This clock, you said, was freestanding, it wasn't on the side of the building?
Correct. It was a freestanding, off of the sidewalk, and there was a pole basically, and is going to be replaced with our school colors very similar. It will have an electronic clock, and it will have our sign on it.
Well, that may be an update, but it's not necessarily in keeping with the nature of the community. I think that should have been brought to us earlier. Thank you for your input at this point. I'm not happy with it, but thank you. Okay, any other comments?
My name is Burge Trinchero. I just want to express my opposition to it. I think one of the great things about Maplewood Square are the small businesses, the people that work there, people that come in to run small businesses. And I think losing that is the total character of the neighborhood. Once you lose that, you lose everything. Then all you have is big box stores and the community is gone. Everybody in the neighborhood shops there, eats in restaurants there, and I think we should preserve that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Excuse me, you didn't give your address.
Pardon?
You didn't give your address.
740 Salem.
740 Salem. They need that for the records.
Jonathan Beckmeyer, 67 Ashland Street. I don't have anything prepared, but I've been listening to the petitioner and to everyone of the citizens talking about what how they feel. And the petitioner is saying that it's erroneous that it's historically significant. Now you guys all know what's historically significant and what's not. You guys know that Malden Square is historically significant. It's like taking a body and chopping off its legs, okay? If you take one very large section of this square away. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about taking it away, demolishing, never to be seen again, except for the books that Steve Winslow showed you. That's where you're going to see it. And you guys know this because you've made those books before, and those books are awesome to look at, right? And to see what Malden used to be like. Well, let's try and keep it like that. Let's not look at those books and say, oh yeah, that's where the CVS was, or that's where this was, or that's where that was. Sorrento's restaurant. That's where Sorrento's was. It's not going to be there anymore if this petitioner follows through with what they want to do. So, yes, Maplewood Square is historically significant. That's what they're petitioning, that it's not this area that they wanted to tear down. But like I said, you tear that down, it's not coming back. It's never coming back. Think about the jobs. Think about the businesses and the storefronts. Gone. Who eliminates that to make way for a playground for the school? They mentioned that
They have a lot of threats. Everybody heard their threats. Parking is going to be a problem. You know, it's threatening. That drives me crazy. Why threaten? If you have a good plan, you don't need to threaten. There's no threats, good plans. This is not a good plan. I just want to close by saying I appreciated what the charter school did with the old firehouse. I really did. They did an amazing job. They preserved it. And that's what being a good preservation partner is all about. This is not being a good partner. This is not being a good partner with the city. What happened? What happened? They used to be, for that project anyway, but not anymore. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the floor?
I have several letters.
Okay, why don't you read them? Please.
I have a letter dated December 1st, 2021. It's regarding 28 Lebanon Street and 12-24 Lebanon Street public hearing. It reads, Dear Ms. Tolstrup and members of the Commission, as you conduct your deliberations this evening on the application for the demolition and alteration of the above-mentioned properties, please consider your determination of significance issued on November 8th, 2021, and determine that these buildings be preferably preserved. As you know, the intent and purpose of Malden's ordinances is to preserve and protect significant buildings within the city which constitute or reflect distinctive features of the architectural, cultural, economic, political, or social history of the city, and to limit the detrimental effect of demolition and alteration of buildings on the character of the city. Both of these properties are, that was a quote from the ordinance, both of these properties are situated in historical Maplewood Square, are associated with one or more historic persons or events, and the loss of which would have a negative impact on the character of this neighborhood. In addition, a determination that the building should be preferably preserved will encourage further dialogue with the applicant and the community and allow for discussion about alternative options that will preserve, rehabilitate, or restore the properties. Again, I respectfully request that you take into consideration your previous determination that both of these buildings are significant and issue a finding that they be preferably preserved. Signed sincerely, Gary Christensen, Mayor, City of Malden. I also have an email dated December 1st, 2021. It reads, I unfortunately have a family obligation tonight. Please read this into the record as in support of finding 12-24 and 28 Lebanon preferably preserved properties. Esteemed members of the Malden Historical Commission, I write in support of the Historical Commission finding the buildings at 12-24 Lebanon and 28 Lebanon preferably preserved. These are buildings that are essential to the urban fabric of neighborhood. This square has been a major area for commerce and community for over a century, second in the city only to Malden Square. Now, unfortunately, we are looking at the possibility of it meeting a similar fate as Suffolk Square, with ill-conceived plans to simply raise the buildings and little indication of what will come next. As a community, we deserve a voice in making sure the future of this neighborhood is bright in a way that does not forget its past. The protection that this commission can provide is pivotal in giving us that voice. Please find in favor of protecting Maplewood Square. Sincerely, Councilor David Kamel, Ward 6, Malden. I also have an a letter sent by email, reads, Dear Honorable Malden Historical Commission, it is pursuant to the public hearing being held on December 1st, 2021. I submit my comments relative to the notice of intent to demolish buildings regarding demolition permit application CMIDO 39265 2021 for the building at the property known as number 12-24 Lebanon Street and demolition permit application CMIDO 39282 2021 28 Lebanon Street. They also list the assessor parcel IDs. I won't read into the record. Thank you for taking the time to read this into the record. As a city council over the last decade, I have had the privilege of drafting legislation and co-sponsoring the demolition delay ordinance. The job was an immense undertaking for the commission to identify and categorize our historic properties within the city of Malden. But proudly, the commission zealously took it on with the mission to preserve Malden's history. I'm very proud of this ordinance. Now we find ourselves faced with evaluation of both 12-24 Lebanon Street and 28 Lebanon Street in the heart of our community. I believe all due diligence should take place for the purpose of making a determination of its value. I believe there is a true significance to our Malden economy there, not only with the inhabitants that reside there with generations of families, our business community desperately trying to make ends meet during COVID, and certainly the historic value these properties hold. I believe the ordinance that is in place should take root, and any demolition permit be delayed as long as possible as we evaluate. I am further saddened that we have even come to this process as there are so many other opportunities within the city to expand the business portfolio of the purchaser. In closing, I truly believe with this demolition of Maplewood Square, we will lose one of the most important values of our Malden, our foundation of neighborhood. Signed, Debbie DiMaria, Councilor at Large. I also have an email dated November 30th, 2021. It reads, I oppose the demolition of any buildings in the Maplewood Square area. Born at Malden Hospital, educated K through 12 in our great public schools, and continuing to live in Malden for almost 65 years, I fear the future of the square is in jeopardy. Nelson's Bakery, currently occupied what is currently Serena's Restaurant in Cannon Castle. My family and so many others would wait long lines on Sunday mornings after church services to take home delicious, freshly baked pastries for breakfast. The aroma made mouths water with anticipation. The currently closed Citizens Bank was once a branch of the Malden Savings Bank, which became the Bank for Savings. This institution was my first introduction to savings, as well as that of my two children. These are nostalgic, wonderful memories that will disappear if these buildings are destroyed. Please let the voices of the residents be heard and counted to save Maplewood Square. Signed, Elizabeth Betty Knight, 20 Valley Street, Malden. Also have an email dated November 30th, 2021 that reads, I grew up in Maplewood and it is disheartening to see the Maplewood Square menu disappear. Many historic buildings have been taken over by organizations with no conception of what these buildings might mean to those of us who can remember. There was a time when you did not have to leave Maplewood to obtain everything you needed for living. Supermarket, hardware store, 5 and 10 cent stores, and incredible bakery more. Must our history be erased? Signed, Owen 920 Valley Street, Malden. And I have an email dated November 7th, 2021. It was submitted when you first began your process, and the person writing it was told that you were not receiving public comment when you had the meeting on November 8th, so he asked that the comments be kept on file until the appropriate time, which would be this hearing, so that the comments could be presented. It reads, Dear Malden Historical Commission, we write to express strong opposition to the approval of demolition permits for the buildings at 12-24 and 28 Lebanon Street. The existing structures are part of the fabric of small businesses in Maplewood Square. Replacing them with buildings for other purposes, especially for school buildings that would result in serious negative traffic impact, would be a poor use of the space and could threaten other businesses in the square. This would be a bad idea regardless of who was proposing it. The fact that Mystic Valley Regional Charter School is behind it makes it even less palatable. Mystic Valley Regional Charter School has proven to be a bad citizen and a bad neighbor that has brought change to a diverse city. In 2014, the Massachusetts ACLU got involved when the school discriminated against LGBT students in their rallies. In 2017, the state determined that Mystic Valley Regional School policies discriminated against students of color. In 2020, racist social media posts by the school co-founder Neil Kinnan led to student protests. The Boston Globe found, quote, a troubling pattern on issues of race when it looked into the situation. In this year, Mystic Valley Regional Charter School sued the state in an attempt to avoid being evaluated on its diversity and inclusion values as other schools are. With a sad, embarrassing track record, throughout, Mystic Valley Regional Charter School has acted like a bully who wants to play by its own rules. Its attempt to remake Maplewood Square is no different. It's time for the city to say enough is enough and put a stop to any more expansion of Mystic Valley Regional Charter School. The demolition or replacement of a chunk of Maplewood Square by Mystic Valley Regional Charter School would be extremely detrimental to our city. It should not be allowed. Signed, Paul Sherman and Susan Gill, 284 Ferry Street, Malden. I believe those are all the comments, public comments for this hearing that I received, but just give me 1 minute to double check. I had received a letter November 30th, 2021 from Council Stephen Winslow. You have that, which he read from. And I believe that is everything that I have received for public comment.
So we have all this information in front of us. There have been some suggestions made that the application was not a good one. That's what we have to go on. So,
Right. If I could, Chair, before you get into your discussion and deliberations, if you want, I would recommend you call one more time for public comment. In the past, before the hearing closes, you have given the petitioner one final chance to make any final comment, and then close the public hearing. Unless you believe more testimony is coming. If not, you close the public hearing, and then you can go into your discussions and deliberations.
it's a good thing she keeps us in line here. We're not used to this like she is, so.
So call for more public comment first.
Any more public comments? Everybody all set? All set that we close the public comments.
And then see, if you want to allow the petitioner during the hearing to speak again, if you want, you can do that. You can allow that if they want to.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything further? Petitioner. You have your chance now.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments on comments that were made today, especially those from city officials, saying that, the school has other alternatives. We've reached out to the city to explore other alternatives, and to date have not received any response back. For there to be this concept that there are other alternatives, the opportunity to assemble 50,000 square feet of space to work with is not an easy task, and took many months of discussions and negotiations with the former owner. The bank building that we talked about was vacant for over a year. Councilor Winslow, has spoken about, maintaining the preservation of Maplewood Square, and, we now, as an occupant of Maplewood Square, we moved some of our staff into the building, and we received a certificate of occupancy at 28 Lebanon Street, and we stare across and look at the facade of a building that doesn't even have a sign and has exposed plywood. And so, I'd encourage some of the efforts that city officials want to apply to truly improve the square. In regards to, the perception of what I spoke about before as being threats, we're dealing with cause and effect. And so we purchased a property for $6.5 million in the 3 properties that we purchased. And as property owners, we have the right to use the property. There's been things said about charter schools. I don't work for some other company. I've been an employee of the charter school for 15 years and have come to work every day in Malden, and have actually had a business office in the square for 5 years. So I understand Maplewood Square. As far as what we're asking for, again, it's to be able to use our property. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I do have one last comment for you. Since we still haven't voted on all this, if that clock is still around someplace, I want it to be there, because that's a remnant. Because when we work with people to develop the project, we try to get pieces of the old places that were there. And if you already taken something away that people recognize as part of that, I would say try to we can work with you on a different sign, like that, but that one should be kept somewhere, I think. But that's my personal opinion, but I think it's a legitimate opinion at this point. I don't want to overstep my bounds either. So.
I understand that the sign structure is a freestanding structure. They've replaced the face of the sign, The structure is still there.
It is still there.
So it's the digital face of it. The building commissioners told me that they had a permit to reface the sign. So that's it, they haven't removed the sign structure. So that's a different thing,
It's still
a
there.
little bit different than what we heard. So, okay, so you should officially,
Can you confirm that it has not been removed, the stand and everything, just the sign?
It's a pole.
It's a pole?
A pole that a sign is attached to, that a digital clock is attached to. By its very nature, a digital clock isn't an historical component.
It's part of
That
the
being said, I don't know the status of the clock. It's a pole with a sign and a clock that's about 10 feet, 8 feet from the building.
I would be interested to know because it is part of the property, piece of the property. Thank you.
okay, so now if you're done with all the public comment, you can officially close the hearing. So you should declare the public hearing is closed.
Okay. I declare the public hearing closed.
Okay. So now you're in a position you can move into deliberations, you can take the matter and make a decision, you can take the matter under advisement. I will let you know, in accordance with the ordinance, you have 14 days from the date of the close of the hearing to render a decision.
I think we should go under advisement and do it as quickly as possible.
You would need to schedule another meeting, it would just be a public meeting, it wouldn't be a hearing, and you would then discuss and deliberate whether you believe the buildings are properly preserved. You can use testimony that you heard tonight, you can use information from the applications, but I want to just comment, you asked me about the applications, or you made a comment about the applications. The applications were considered to be complete by the building commissioner when he reviewed them. That is why they were forwarded to you for review under the first part of the demolition ordinance, which is to determine whether the buildings are significant. So they were deemed to be complete. There was some supplemental information they added after the original filing, which was the site plan and the narrative description, and we were told that it was an interim plan. You did not receive building plans or plans of the new building that they might construct. The application indicated that this was an interim plan and that they did not have that plan developed yet.
Right.
So in terms of determining, the application's inaccurate or incomplete or rejecting them outright, I don't know what grounds or standing you would have to do that, since you've already begun the process of review.
I would assume that once we receive them, they're accurate enough for us to work on.
Right, now if
Our
you want more
question is-
information, that is something you can ask the
We can have some
petitioner.
more information, or we can look into this the way it stands and come up with some sort of alternative, the way we do normally, give our verdict of the reasons why.
Right, you would need to state in writing that, let me just get
As
this.
we've done on the original part of the significance.
Right, well, yes, so let me just get to this. You do all have a copy of this. This is the section of the ordinance. I'm just going to try to find mine. So, you have a copy of the intent and purpose, which has been referenced a couple times. That's the first page. And it discusses, what the purpose of the ordinance is. It's enacted for preserving and protecting significant buildings, structures, monuments, sites within the city which constitute or reflect distinctive features of the architectural, cultural, economic, political, social history to limit the detrimental effect of demolition of buildings of character. Through the ordinance, owners of properly preserved buildings are encouraged to seek out alternative options that would preserve, rehabilitate, or restore the buildings. Residents of the city are limited to impending demolitions. The ordinance provides a predictable process for reviewing requests to demolish buildings, establishing an appropriate waiting period during which the city and the applicant can propose, consider alternatives to demolition of a building of historical, architectural, cultural, or urban design value. Provides opportunity for public comment, that's why you have the hearing, and it minimizes the number of and extent of demolition of historical, architectural, cultural, urban design value. So that's the purpose and intent of the ordinance. You've made the determination the buildings are significant. You've held the required hearing tonight. So now you are in a position to determine whether the buildings are properly preserved. As I said, your time frame for decision is 14 calendar days after the public hearing. you would need to notify the building commissioner in writing. But I also wanted to call your attention to the definition of preferably preserved, which I've given you. You certainly can use the criteria for determination of significance, but I also just wanted to refer you to this. So preferably preserved building is a significant building which the commission determines following a public hearing that exists in the public interest to be preserved rather than demolished. A preferably preserved building is subject to the 12-month demolition delay period of this ordinance. So that's where you are now to determine whether these buildings are preferably preserved.
Okay, and I think that's what we're all thinking of right now. But I think it takes a little bit more looking through some of the stuff. All the testimony looks great, but we've also been here for a number of hours, and I think we need to clear our heads. So I think we should set up another meeting so that we can actually make and give them proper consideration and give them the good results one way or the other, so they'll know what's going on.
Okay, so you want to take everything under advisement,
Yep.
and then you will take everything under advisement. You'll reconvene at a public meeting, at which time you make the determination whether the buildings are preferably preserved. Do you want to set that meeting date now? I would suggest that you do.
Yep. I got my calendar.
And, I'll note for the record, this is typically your course of action. You hold the hearing and then you take it under advisement, as you said, so you can give it due deliberation, all the testimony that you heard, and have a chance to review the applications and all the materials again.
And then at the next meeting, we publish our final decision.
Right. At the next meeting, well, you can meet as many times as you want, but you only have 14 days to render the decision. So I would suggest you meet at least for the first time. I think on one or two cases in the past, you met several times before you make a decision, but typically it's only one additional meeting. So my point is I would schedule the first meeting next week in case you need to do another meeting. You still have another chance within the 14 days to do that.
Now, the possibility is...
So today is the 1st, so you have to have everything, your decision rendered by the 15th. So Monday, the 6th is an option. We have to post the notice of meeting. We only need 48 hours to do that, so we have to post it tomorrow. Monday or the 6th or the 7th is an option. The 8th or the 9th, any day, 6, 7, 8, or 9 would be. The 8th, what time are you talking?
We're talking more than 11 o'clock.
The 8th, are all the commissioners available?
Yeah.
December 8th?
That's Wednesday, December 8th.
At 11 a.m.
11 a.m. for the meeting.
This will be a meeting, this will be the only matter I'll put on the agenda. This will be your deliberations to make a determination whether the buildings are preferably preserved. Is there any more, so we'll need a motion and then a vote on that, but also before you do that, is there any additional information you want from the petitioner to be provided prior to that? Do you need any other information? If not, I would just say specify it if you do now.
No, I can't specify anything now. That's why I want to read through all the stuff all over again.
So December 8th, 11 a.m., December 8th, 11 a.m. So you would need a motion to take the matter under advisement. Joe is making the motion. Who's
I shouldn't say.
Who's seconding?
Someone else.
Who is seconding the motion?
Okay. All in
Mary?
favor?
Aye. All in favor?
Aye, all four. Yep.
Okay, so now you would need to adjourn your meeting.
Okay. I think we can adjourn now. Thank you very much for your patience.
You have a motion to adjourn and a
Oh,
second.
that's non-debatable. If you want to say, all those in favor of adjourning?